I think that's my cue. I can't hear you, TJ, so I'm hoping it is in fact my turn to speak. Thank you, TJ. It has been wonderful convening this series with you. I'm joining you today from a Wabakal country, and I too pay my respects to elders past and present. Thank you for joining us at this final event in our series that has taken us on a tasty journey of nutrition, health, and food innovations. Tonight, we will hear about the future of food and nutrition. I invite you all to join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag FoodThoughts21. That's FoodThoughts21 as digits. Questions can be submitted by scanning the QR code that's on the screen or by clicking the link. Now, back to TJ to get us started with the future of food and nutrition.
Tom, if you can hear me, are we meant to be hearing what's going on? Because I don't hear anything.
Okay, can I go? Am I good to go? Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Emma, TJ, and Lisa for inviting me to present to the audience of the Academy on the future of food and nutrition. So I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I also want to extend this acknowledgement to the Dakinjong people of the land where the Central Coast campus of the University of Newcastle resides and where I work. Okay, so the theme of today's session is the future of food and nutrition. But because I'm a food scientist and food technologist, I've decided to title my mini talk, Innovative Technologies for Future Foods. And I'm going to cover some new and existing techniques for producing foods, and then briefly discuss how these can shape the future of food production. So I think it is important for us to look at why we are concerned about the future and why we need to plan. So looking at the chart on the screen from the Atlas of Food, we can see that the world population has been growing steadily and is projected to reach 9.2 billion by 2050. And also the recent United Nations World Population Projections also show similar growth trends, indicating that there will be more people to feed in the future. Meanwhile, if we want a healthy population and highly productive people, then we must deliver healthy and high quality food for all, while also preserving the environment. So it is one thing to deliver good, high quality food for everyone in the future. It's another thing to also preserve our environment. So we need to change our focus from just producing more food to producing more healthy food. So what are the things that will shape the future of food and nutrition? So there are many factors that will shape the future of food and nutrition, but because of the time that we have today, I've only got 20 minutes to present. I would just discuss two very important factors, and these will come from the consumers and the producers, from the perspective of the consumers and also from the producers. So number one is health and well-being. So the demand for food with specific health claims is increasing because consumers are becoming increasingly conscious of what they eat. So they are turning to healthy foods. The other thing is that because food producers now know that consumers are looking for healthy foods, there is an increase in the production of novel specialty foods. So these are foods with one or more positive health benefits, or what we call functional foods. So these novel specialty foods can also be premium luxury products. For example, as you can see on the screen, you have some products such as garlic infused olive oil. Also, you can also have truffle infused olive oil, chili infused olive oil, and there are so many products like that in the market. And also, some 3D printed foods are also becoming, very prominent in the market today. And I'm going to talk on 3D printed foods down the track. Now, unsurprisingly, studies have shown that those who consume foods for health and well-being, they tend to waste less food compared to those who do not. Because these people buy exactly what they need in terms of calorie, protein, vitamins, and many other considerations that they have before buying their food, and also based on what they want to consume. And this is also true for producers of specialty foods, because these food products require specific ingredients and specialized technology. So they tend to reduce food waste during production. This is significantly reduced during production of food. So what are the things that we need to look out for when we are producing the food of the future? So I want to say that it is fair to say that future foods will be mostly functional foods, because they are going to be foods that would impact positively on our health. So these foods can be produced by adding one or more components to an existing food, or by removing some component from an existing food, or by concentrating some component in an existing food in order to make this new functional, healthy food product. Also, we can try and modify some of the properties of the food in order to increase their bioavailability or improve their health impact when we consume them. So what I want to do is that what I'm going to talk to Ross today is I'm going to talk to Ross about some of the eco-friendly food processing technologies and how they are expected to impact on the quality of food that are going to be produced in the future. So I'm going to also talk about some innovative food products and see how the technologies involved can be used to produce the food of the future. So I'm going to start by talking to Ross about resveratrol enhanced wine. I know some of us take wine, we drink wine a lot in Australia, but some of us may have purchased this product before. It's an innovative Australian-made product, which is wine that has resveratrol added to it. So this wine has around 100 times more resveratrol than you find in ordinary red wine. And resveratrol is a natural polyphenol with antioxidant property, and it's commonly found in grape skins and in seeds. So this wine producer takes the leftover grape. So how they get their resveratrol is they get their leftover grape, which we also call grape pomace. After pressing, they get the pomace, then they extract the residual resveratrol, because this resveratrol, like I said, are found in the seed and on the grape skins. So what they do is they extract resveratrol from the waste and then they concentrate it. This is then added to the wine before they bottle the wine. So this is the technology they use in extracting the resveratrol. Although I've just explained it in a very simple term, I understand that these involve a lot of more techniques and things that have been patented in order to be able to produce this resveratrol. The good thing is that it does not change the wine's color or taste. So when they add resveratrol to this wine, the color does not change. The taste also is not affected. Another thing is that this producer will never run out of materials from which the resveratrol is extracted, because there will always be leftover grapes. So wherever you go wherever they produce grapes and wine, you will see that they always have grape pomace. So that grape pomace, which is the leftover grape, is what this producer will always use to extract resveratrol from and then add to the wine when it's produced. So we are doing similar projects also in our group here, whereby we are developing novel methods of extracting bioactive compounds from winery waste for food application. So I believe that these techniques will keep evolving and they can be used for producing the wine of the future. The other product I want to talk about is alcohol removed wine. So when alcohol removed wine first came into the market, years ago, it was greeted with skepticism, but it is becoming increasingly popular today because people see that there's a lot of health benefits that can be derived from drinking this type of wine. In fact, the non-alcoholic wine market is predicted to be worth $10 billion by 2070. So that is credited to the drinkbusiness.com. So this is going to be a huge multi-billion-dollar business in the market, rather, in the future. And there are many reasons why it is being accepted now. For instance, this type of alcohol may have the ability to reduce the risk of alcohol-related harm. And also, when alcohol is removed from wine, what it does is that a lot of calories are also taken out. So this wine may be referred to as diet wine because you're taking out a lot of calories, you are not consuming much of the calories. So you are not having too much sugars in your system. So it can be referred to as diet wine. Now, what I'm trying to say this is that some of these products will keep coming into the market because people are beginning to realize that there's importance. I mean, there's a lot of good things to gain when you consume foods that have health impact. I mean, positive health implication. Again, there's an increasing evidence that alcohol is bad for pregnant women as it may affect the unborn child. So therefore, products like this may be suitable during pregnancy. The other food I want to talk about, or ingredient I want to talk about, is omega-3 fatty acids. I know that omega-3 fatty acids have been around for quite a while, but I have included them here because of their broad range of applications in novel food production, and also their role, the role they play in the future. They are going to play in the future foods. So the major omega-3 fatty acids that we may have known, they are known as omega-3, EPA, and DHA, which are mainly derived from marine organisms such as fish, algae, and krill. Now, these oils are also very high in saturated fatty acid, which is unhealthy. So they must be removed before they can be used as functional food ingredients. So before we use this omega-3 concentrate, we need to remove the saturated fatty acid from them. Unfortunately, concentrate of EPA and DHA are produced using chemicals and fractional distillation methods. And these methods involve very high temperature, and they can also affect the stability of the omega-3 fatty acids. So therefore, the use of food-grade enzymes is seen as the best alternative because reactions involving enzymes are greener, they are environmentally friendly because nasty chemicals are not involved. Besides, products made using enzymes are considered natural for regulatory purposes. So enzymes can hydrolyze these saturated fatty acids and remove them as free fatty acids, which can then be separated and removed, taken away from the omega-3, EPA, and DHA. And then the pure concentrate can be added to a broad range of products such as infant formulas, as drinks, and as nutritional supplements. And also in our group, we have used this method to produce DHA concentrate with about 90% purity. And we have generated about 2 patents and several publications in scientific journals. So why I'm trying to put this out is that most of the foods, especially infant formulas and many other foods, now contain omega-3 fatty acids. But many people don't understand what has gone into extraction of this omega-3 fatty acid before they can be added into these foods that we consume. What we are proposing is that, or what we know, which is the trend now, is that enzymes are better alternatives to the chemical methods and the fractional distillation method of extracting and concentrating these omega-3 fatty acids. I also want to talk about one of the newest innovations, which is known as edible coatings. Some of us may know this, or for those who don't know. So edible coatings are, they came from, the concept of edible coatings actually came from some fruits that produce natural wax, which helps them resist moisture loss, enhance firmness, and also slow down natural degradation. But not all fruits have natural wax that offers this level of protection. So what food scientists came up with is the idea of formulating edible coats around foods, especially fruits. So these coats can be produced using polysaccharides, which is a form of carbohydrates, also proteins, lipids, or a combination of these, which is known as composite. And it can be formed around produce by dipping, spraying, or dripping. So what we can do is we can dip our fruits into these edible coatings, maybe in a solution. We put them there, and then when they are taken out, you can dry them, and then you see the wax or the edible coats on the surface of the fruit. The same thing goes for spraying. It can be sprayed on the fruit, and then they can be applied by dripping. And a lot of innovative works are now being done in this space. And I'm going to discuss one of such this evening. So edible coatings are being used for preserving banana, which is something that, is already in the market, especially in the US and in the UK, also in Europe, and it's also part of Australia as well. It can be used to keep banana to be fresh for more than 10 days. And it can also help keep green beans fresh for more than 15 days. As you can see from the picture on the slide, this is a company in the US, which is known as Appeal, which is APEEL. So this company made this product from plant extract. It's mainly from plant extract, and it does not involve the use of any chemical. So they apply it on these fruits and vegetable, and they found that it can extend their shelf life. In fact, they have also tried it using different types of produce, such as pear, apple, cucumber, pineapple, and many other fruits and vegetables. In another study, which is the picture you can see on the right, this was done by some teams in China, and they are known as Li et al., which they use edible coating to delay the ripening and softening of avocado for 7 days. So when this was applied, it actually extended the shelf life of avocado for 7 days. And I believe that this innovative technology should help in curbing the wastage of avocado, especially in Australia. I believe some of us may have seen this in the news last month. So it was in the news that avocados were dumped because of oversupply. And this oversupply means that there are a lot of avocados that were coming from New Zealand, which are very cheap. So they affected the market in Australia. So although I agree that there are many reasons why this may have occurred, but I also understand that because of the rapid ripening and softening of the avocado, this may have led to the reason why the farmers had to throw these avocados away. In fact, this article, which is from ABC News, was about a farmer in Western Australia that actually spent about $400,000 to bring people into Australia to harvest the avocados, and then most of them actually were thrown away. So what I'm trying to say here is that we need to find ways to prevent these type of losses in the future. And also the thing I found interesting here is that the production of avocados next year is going to reach about 120,000 tons. So it's predicted to be for us to have about 120,000 tons of avocado in 2022. And then just imagine this year where we have 80,000 avocados, farmers have to throw much of these avocados away. Imagine what will happen next year when we have around 120,000 avocados. So the question is, would the farmers throw away these avocados again, or we are going to find ways to help them extend the shelf life of avocados so that this type of losses, would not occur again in the future? So potentially edible coatings, I believe, may help reduce this waste significantly. And I also believe that we need to start embracing this type of produce in Australia, because if we are looking up to the future and we want to reduce wastage like this, then we must find ways, technologies that would help us reduce wastage so that farmers can have money that they have worked for at the end of the production year. The other thing I want to talk about is edible films, which is another category of edible coatings. So edible films are formed on a food or as coating or preformed, and they are wrapped around a food. They can be made to be flexible or to be rigid. So this is a new technology that has been, that a lot of research works have been, put into getting this type of result. And one thing we found is that this is going to be evolving as well in the future. A lot of technologies will be coming in, and production of, making of edible films and utilization of edible films for our food product is going to be on the increase in the future. For example, currently we use animal intestine and collagen for our sausage casing. And I know that there's not a lot of people that actually embrace the use of animal intestine and collagen. So I believe in the future, edible films can be used instead of intestine and collagen, animal intestine and collagen. And also they can be used for plant-based meat products. So you see some of the plant-based meat products that are already in the market now, edible coatings can be used, especially those that come from plant produce, sometimes from plant waste. So plant-derived edible films can be used for plant-based meat products. And who knows, in the future, they may also be used as casings for salami and several other meat products. Because now we have made some antimicrobial edible films that contain some antimicrobial materials in them that prevent the effect of microorganisms on some of our meat and meat products. So I believe that this is a technology that is going to be widely available in the future that can also be useful for preserving our meat and meat products. The last one I want to talk about is 3D printing. And I know some of us may have heard about 3D printing before. So it is relatively new and is gaining more attention by the day. In fact, we need to understand that 3D printing is no longer science fiction. It is now science fact. So it's a form of food production by additive manufacturing techniques. And it's similar to icing a cake using a piping bag. You know, when we want to apply our icing on the cake, you have a piping bag and you put your icing in a bag and you press it and you keep adding the icing on the cake. So the same technology is what 3D printing is using. It's also adding different materials or different ingredients on a particular food, or starting from scratch, and then just adding different layers of ingredients to make a product, a food product. So like I said, when this product was introduced, most of the foods printed were sweet, such as chocolate and cakes. And this turned a lot of people off because they are processed foods and a lot of them are unhealthy foods. But 3D printing of food has evolved because fresh, healthy ingredients can now be used in 3D printers, which can promote healthy eating and also personalized nutrition. As you can see, some school children there, in this school in the UK, students were served 3D printed foods. And the purpose of this was to get them interested in STEM courses. I mean, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So they want to get the student to be interested in these courses. And that's why they started bringing this technology to schools in the United Kingdom. And also there are restaurants in Europe and also in the United Kingdom and in the US that are now serving 3D printed foods. I guess the point I want to bring out of here is that these technologies are here to stay. Although they may not be well accepted now, but in the future, these are the things that we're going to continue to see. So I want to conclude my talk by stressing that the purpose of developing innovative food technologies is because we want to be able to produce healthy foods of the future. So we should recognize that turning food waste into healthy food should be a part of our strategies moving forward. And you can see some products on the screen that are made from wasted fruit and vegetables. And some of the techniques used in making this product are already available. So with that, I will say thank you for your time and for listening to a topic that I am passionate about. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. How about that for the future? So I apologize to our online audience. I apologize to our online audience. You missed my opening remarks, but I hope you can hear me now. Anything you missed was me introducing my convener, Matt. So thank you, Taiwo, again. I would now like to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Flavia Fayet-Moore. Flavia is the CEO of Nutrition Research Australia, an organization that conducts end-to-end nutrition and communication projects. Flavia is also joining us virtually, so please join me again in welcoming Flavia.
Thank you very much. Ginagai, I'm presenting from Gumbangir country, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today to talk about my favorite science, nutrition science, and give you a snapshot of what nutrition and food is going to look like in the future. Now, we all eat to live, but many of us, like myself, also live to eat. As soon as I finish a meal, I'm already planning my next one. So what we eat and how we eat not only defines who we are as individuals, but it also defines who we are as a culture and our cultural identity. So by understanding our food, we can also help predict what our future would look like. So about almost 3 years ago, I was talking to my team and we were planning different projects. And I said, look, NASA is going to be one of our clients one day. And everyone looked at me like, what? She's dreaming, crazy CEO, fire her. No, it's not going to happen. But fast forward almost 3 years and look at today. We have a record number of humans in space. Just 3 days ago, we hit that record with 19 people currently in space. And Elon Musk has basically sold all his assets with the intent to create civilization in Mars. So we will be needing nutrition in space, but I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later. So how am I going to predict the future? So this is basically from my 20 years of being in nutrition science, my take on what the future might look like. I'm going to be talking about from agriculture to food service and even to personalization and genetics to give you a snapshot of what I think food and nutrition might look like in 50 to maybe 100 years from today. So the first one is agriculture. So how is food grown and developed in the future? Obviously, it's going to have to be sustainable or we're not going to survive. But I also think that our food supply is we're going to have to optimize that supply chain to make food cheaper and also equitable and accessible to all and to everyone in the world. And most importantly, which links to sustainability, is that I think that we're not going to have so much food waste. Because as Tayo spoke about, we're even repurposing waste from wine production in our food supply. A third of the food that is produced is currently wasted. So I can nearly guarantee for a sustainable food future, we need to reduce that amount. So one of the ways that we're going to achieve agriculture and sustainable agriculture in the future is to have an upward expansion of farming. So with hydroponic farms, aeroponic farms, which is basically not using any soil, they can be put anywhere in the middle of a business district, but also in the middle of your community of where you live. So by changing how agriculture looks like, we're also changing how we live. We've seen with the pandemic that there's no need for CBD anymore in cities, right? We're really expanding and decentralizing our society. And at the same time, we're going to decentralize where our farms are located, which also means that there's going to be more connection to the farm, I think, by people, and also less food miles traveled, because you can put these farms anywhere. But as a nutrition scientist and dietitian, what I question is, well, what is truly the effect of food grown this way on our health? Is it the same having red and blue lights on the effect of the nutrition of the plant as if they were in the sun? What about all the microorganisms in the soil that no longer would exist in this type of farming? So just food for thought, to think about the implications that as our food systems change, what effect would that have personally on us from a nutrition standpoint? As you've seen, the repurposing of waste from red wine production, but even wastewater. So water is probably going to be one of the most sought after commodities in the world in the future. And we really need to repurpose water into anything that we can. especially in Australia, beer is pretty important, so I'm sure it will be one of the first things being wastewater will be used for. The concept already exists, so it's not new, but we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Even edible mushroom production waste. Mushrooms are amazing that they have umami, which is our 5th basic taste. And if you add umami, you can sprinkle from the waste production of mushrooms onto foods. It helps enhance flavor and lower the amount of salt that you're adding to foods. But we'll also see a lot of our waste being reutilized into nutraceuticals. So think about potato peels. You know, most of the nutrition in potatoes is actually in the peels, so don't peel them before you mash them and eat it. All the antioxidants, a lot of the fiber. So you can repurpose that into pills and nutraceuticals, and even from commercial juices. For example, what happens to the orange peel once it's been used? So we are going to repurpose as much as we can. From a food service perspective, how do we access food? What is going to change? Well, we definitely need food that's healthy, but we also need food that's safe and food that's convenient. And most importantly, we need it to be tasty, because food is only nutritious if we actually eat it. So this company called Farther Farms are using science and technology to naturally pasteurize foods. So there is absolutely no need in refrigeration of the food. So you can basically make it with less energy input, but then you don't need to keep food refrigerated as it's being transported. And then there's no refrigeration needed when it's at the point of sale. One example is that they've created the first ever not frozen French fry. It has a 2-month shelf life. And as technology and science advances and we're able to create foods like this, then it also means that we're increasing equity and access to food, because food will last for a long time and there is no need for the cold chain to transport it. So it's really going to allow for greater globalization of the food supply. But what about your fruit and veg? How are we going to preserve them? Now there's a solution already, and this is a sticker that you're not going to want to peel from your fruit. So this company created a technology naturally derived from the plants, which is really, really amazing. Plants can produce this compound that prevents ripening, because if they want to protect themselves from insects or microbes, they produce this compound, and they've been able to allow that sticker to create a layer of that compound around the fruit. Because without the sticker, this is what it looks like. So that's 2 weeks where that mango has been preserved longer than it would. It's one of the ways that we can really reduce food waste, because no one would eat the mango on the right, but everyone would eat the mango on the left, right? So it's a really nice way to, again, to increase access of fresh fruits and vegetables to where usually you're not able to. In the center of Australia, for example, it's very difficult to get fresh fruits and vegetables because it goes off quite quickly, and there isn't as much distribution for the fruit and vegetables. So you can't actually buy fresh, it's usually canned or frozen. So it's again increasing that access of a food supply so everyone can have a healthy and nutritious diet. So remember drive-thrus where you didn't have to get out of your car? Now there's drone deliveries where you actually don't have to get out of your house anymore. We've obviously seen an acceleration in this space with the pandemic, but it's going to become more and more common. Just like Amazon revolutionized shopping, food is also being revolutionized with drone deliveries and ghost kitchens, which are basically kitchens that are purpose-built just for food delivery. So there's some brands in North America where the whole brand is remote. It's in ghost kitchens. And you can even have food halls, so mass production of all the deliveries across different brands to get food to people that's safe. So what's happening though with all this is it's really individualizing our experience with food. And I think that it's really, really important that we remember that social connection that we have with a meal, the social connection when we taste our parents or our grandparents' recipe, right? That's all part of being healthy as well. And we can't forget that as we move into the future. So let me introduce to you the very first 100% robotic kitchen that's now available for purchase. If you go to molly.com, there's an amazing video to watch. You can teach the robots recipes and they can make the food for you. So it's, again, coming back to that human factor. We know that, yes, it's like Thermomix on steroids. It will make the same thing consistently, But everyone knows when you're in a bad mood and you try a recipe, it never works out. The souffle doesn't rise, the pavlova crashes. But when you're really happy and you're in a good mood, that human factor makes food taste so good, and then you can't replicate it again. So it's really important for us to remember that connection to food. And another example is with children. So we know that sitting and having a meal with children, it contributes more to their literacy than reading them a book. So just that experience that we have around food is more than just nutrition. So what foods are we going to actually be eating in the future? So one of the things technology has brought us the robotic kitchens, which will probably have 3D printers like Tao mentioned, but we're also going to use technology and blockchain to have greater traceability of where our food comes from, especially useful with fresh produce because it doesn't have as much packaging where you can put health claims and nutrition information on it. So everyone has a smartphone. It's in our pockets. You know, we probably have more than one computer, and it's going to be a total reality. It already is. We already know how to use it and scan a QR code by checking in. And when you scan that QR code, you're going to have information about the farmer who actually, you know, grew those raspberries. There'll be information about recipes or how to store it and keep the food safe, for example. Or you can even just give feedback direct to the farmer about their product. So it's really nice because we can get all the nutrition information that you can't fit on pack. It gives also access to information for everyone so they can make informed choices about the foods that they eat. And it allows for that traceability and authenticity, especially with wines, for example, to make sure that the wine that you're buying is not going to be a fake. Now, we're also going to eat foods in 50, probably 100 years from now that look nothing like what we eat today. And these are two examples. On the left, you've got carrots, and on the right, you have your tomatoes. So using science and technology, we can engineer foods to have the traits we like, and get rid of the ones we don't, like all that scrawny root system and really skinny carrots, add more beta carotene, make them more orange, and so on. So the foods that we are eating in the future, probably in 100 years from now, most of us wouldn't recognize them. So the other thing too would be interesting is that we'll probably have traits in food that for our convenience, like onion that doesn't make you cry, and maybe odorous garlics. You can give a garlic-free kiss, and maybe even from an allergenic perspective. So having peanuts without the allergen that gives peanut allergy. What about diet? So carnivore, flexitarian, plant-rich, plant-forward, plant this, plant that, vegan, vegetarian, lacto-vegetarian, pesco-vegetarian. I don't think we're going to be labeling our diets in a certain way. I think we'll just be eating foods in certain frequencies. And my prediction is that the foods that we'll be eating will fall into 4 kingdoms. So the kingdoms are just a biological name that scientists give to organisms that have very similar traits. So in your plants, you've got vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds, oils, and fats and grains. Then you've got protostat, which is your algae and seaweed. Then fungi, which is completely different to plant or animal, which is where mushrooms sit, and yeast. And then lastly, sustainable animal foods, sustainable meat, fish, eggs, dairy, but also the introduction of insects. What will the dietary guidelines look like? We'll probably be eating a variety of sustainable foods from the 4 kingdoms, eating a rainbow of color because we know how important color is. There's more to food than just the micronutrients. It's also the bioactives that are in there. It's important for us to then know where food comes from and have that connection to the food, but also, as I mentioned, to eat with others and eat mindfully. So let's have a quick look at which kind of foods would be in those kingdoms and what should you be thinking about in terms of nutrition. So there'll be CBD-based foods for sure. Ben & Jerry already has a prototype. As soon as they can launch it legally, I'm sure they will. There's all the animal alternatives that you've probably heard about. So your plant-based meat or plant-based meat alternatives. And then a lot more focus on native plants and utilizing plants that are in our backyard from a sustainability perspective and nutrition. So this is an example of a 100% vegan product that's meant to mimic eggs. looks like eggs, tastes like eggs, bakes like eggs, but it's not eggs. So it's the future, in terms of sustainability. But I question as well, what is the nutritional impact of that food in our bodies? So there's actually a paper that just got published in July this year, where they looked at grass-fed beef and plant-based meat and compared exactly the same nutrition information panel. So energy, fat, carbohydrates, proteins, etc. Everything identical, and looked at the metabolic effect that those two foods had on the body, and it was substantially different. So that's what I question. If there's no animal involved, then there are animals not getting sunshine and vitamin D, and then there's no microbiome in the animal to produce B12. So it's really important that we don't go into the plant-based protein alternatives the way we did with the fat-free era. And kind of let's learn from our mistakes and really do more research to know what the effect of these foods that are more sustainable have on our health. We also, I think it's really important that we look at our own backyard in Australia. And as we have the oldest culture in the human race, there's over 30,000 years of experience in agriculture and caring for our food and country. So I think it's really important that we harness the power of native foods and that we don't only use it to make lemon myrtle cookies. So what about the animal kingdom, right? So there's the difference now is probably more sustainable meats like kangaroo that we're going to be looking at, but also lab-grown meats. So there's now technology to create a piece of steak, to create milk without the animal, and there'll be a lot more insects on our plate. So when you're looking at cultivating lab-grown meats, we can now produce a piece of steak in 1 month instead of 2 years. And again, when you think about, well, what is the effect of that on our health? Yes, it looks identical, tastes identical, but metabolically, it might not be the same. So let's consider that before we make this massive boom of food production. So we don't look back and not learn from the past, because the past can predict the future. And last but not least, we're going to be having a lot more insects on our plate, but don't worry, it's not going to be chocolate-covered crickets for Christmas. The way that this is going to be done is like insect powder being added to animal feeds and also being used as supplements in food or protein powders. So you're probably not going to be eating the insects, but it's a very sustainable way to get protein, which is what we need to feed a population of 10 billion. Fungi are unique. It's not a plant, it's not an animal, so eat your mushrooms. It's really important to enhance flavor. They have unique nutritional properties, like the largest source of ergothioneine in the diet, which is an amino acid, a type of building block of protein that is important for immunity, for example. It's also used as a technology in lab-grown meats and plant-based alternatives is to use fungi as a processing aid. So not only can you use it to make the plant-based meat alternative, but it can also help in the processing. Now, there's over 500 digestive enzymes that can be found in mushrooms, so that can be used in processing food. This company, for example, has created a salmon burger using fungi that looks, smells, and tastes like salmon. Protista, which is really exciting. I think it's like completely the future. Go buy shares in algae farming because it's a highly sustainable crop. It can feed humans, it can feed animals, and you can make the alternative proteins with it. It solves all our problems. There's over 1 million species of algae. They can provide all the essential nutrients that we need, and it's highly sustainable. They can sequester carbon dioxide without making the ocean acidic. So it's really exciting to see a lot of food innovation in the space. We're also going to be seeing a lot of personalization. So yes, the genetics, biohacks, eating according to your chronotype, which is your circadian 24-hour cycle. There's a lot of personalization that's happening. We, as dietitians, we already personalize diets, right, by food preferences, by your age and your gender, but we're going to be seeing a lot more and stock standard from a public health perspective. So I think that people are already get their genetic testing done when they're born. So there's for PKU test, which is phenylketonuria, to test for a nutrient genetic disorder. But there's also lactose intolerance, which most people would be familiar with, or gluten intolerance, which have that underpinning genetic basis for it. So at the individual level, you will grow up already knowing what are you going to eat, how can you tweak your diets, how do you introduce solids to a baby, knowing kind of where the genetic makeup when it comes to nutrition. So that's where the future will be. It already is. I've been in this space for 20 years, practicing it for 10. So it's really going to just become cheaper and cheaper and more available to everyone. What about space? So we are expanding opportunities from an exploration perspective, but we're also going to holiday in space. Like I mentioned, civilians are going to space. We have 19 now. There'll be hundreds, if not thousands, of people in space. George Jetson's birthday is next year, so we are in the future. We'll probably, Tesla cars self-drive. It's not going to be long before they're flying. It's really a reality. And when I say these kind of things, people look at me like, "Are you sure?" And you just think about 30, 40 years ago, if I told you that everyone would have an ability with a small device in their pocket that they can call anyone in the world and actually see them live, right? Like science and technology advances quicker than probably our brains can cope. So if you're going to have luxury vacations in space, you need to prepare your body for it before and during, because you don't want to come back from space looking 10 years older. And that's where nutrition and dietitians will come into play, ensuring you're getting enough nutrients to maintain your bone mass, because you lose quite a lot when you're not in gravity, and so on. There's even air protein. So NASA developed this concept in the 1970s, and now it's getting picked up again because you need to transport food to Mars, for example, and there's not enough space, and it doesn't last that long. So there's a company called Air Protein harnessing nitrogen from the air, which is what plants do, to make protein, which nitrogen is one of the components of protein. So it's a really exciting space. And last but not least, I want to talk about that community, right? Because that social connection to food is extremely important. Food connects us all, and we've all felt it during the pandemic. What happens when there's social isolation, where we can't have a meal with people we love? It has a huge impact on our health and well-being. In the future, there will be houses and communities that will probably have zero waste and be self-sufficient. If you're interested in seeing what that looks like, you can visit the Future Food System. I haven't yet, but it looks amazing to see how they actually create that household and community that is sustainable. So to finish up, as our society becomes more and more personalized, more and more decentralized, eating alone, eating in your home, like why do we go get a coffee at a cafe when we can make it at home, right? Because we need that social connection around the food we eat. And we need to consider that many determinants of health that affect us are underpinned by social interactions. We aren't meant to do it solo, and we can't possibly do it solo as we move into the future. We really need to ensure that all these advancements in science and technology on what we eat and how we eat don't throw away like thousands of years of knowledge and skill that can be passed on by those social interactions. The future of nutrition will really be based on a fine balance between individual needs and the needs of the community. So with all this illness and this physical and mental health that we've seen nowadays, if maybe we focus a little bit less on the I and focus a little bit more on the we, then we can have nutrition and health for all, for a very sustainable, nutritious, and equitable food supply. Thank you so much.
So much, Flavia. It's now time for questions from the audience for both our speakers. You can submit your questions by scanning the QR code that should come up on the screen, or click the link on the page where you are watching the stream. I've got a few questions that have come through already, so I'll dive into those. Flavia, Taiwo, this is for both of you. What is your number one food of the future that you are most excited about getting to eat? Flavia, do you want to go first?
Sure. I kind of already said in my presentation, I think anything to do with algae, right? Because there'll be so much that can be created that we haven't even tasted.
Before I go to you, Taiwo, there's another question about the algae. Are we going to be able to make algae taste good?
I think so. So it's already being created. Like there's plant-based meat alternatives created using algae. So I think it's definitely an alternative to sustainable fish. Right? So to replace fish production, but I think we can still use it as a processing aid, like we have with mushrooms, to create the foods that we need to feed 10 billion people.
All right, Taiwo, what future food excites you the most?
Yeah, I mean, it's every food that can be printed using 3D printing method. It's something that is changing, and I just don't, I can't wait for me to go into a restaurant in Australia where I will go sit down and eat 3D printed food.
Sounds fun. Okay, the next question, again for both of you, Taiwo, I'll get you to go first this time. How do we balance the issue of trust in these new technologies when there's so much money involved in making food? How do we get people to trust these new technologies are for the people and not for the corporations?
Good question. Okay, there are a few things I want to say in that space. Number one is these things don't just happen overnight. It takes time. So trust is going to be built over time. For example, I will tell you that none of us would envisage that we are going to have microwave in our houses, in the kitchen this day. And fast forward to now 20, 30 years from now, you may end up seeing 3D printer like sitting beside your microwave at home, but it's going to take time. So things may be very expensive now, and we understand that there are so many politicking and so many things that can be going behind the scene when these products are made. We understand that. But what is also important for us to think of is when these new technologies are coming out and we see that they are having impact on the society, we just need to take time to trust, and then over time we are going to understand and get the benefit of the technologies. Yeah.
Flavia, do you have thoughts on trust?
Sure, yeah. I think having that QR code and be able to scan food and know where it comes from and being able to ask questions and having full traceability and transparency in the food supply, I think will really help building trust. I also agree with what Tyle said in terms of it takes time. And for example, the modern kitchen that we have nowadays didn't exist 100 years ago. Right? And also we share information, personal information about ourselves every day on our devices. And, there was a movie, I can't remember what that movie's called, but it was like the government satellites are watching you. But now we willingly share that information because the benefit of sharing it outweighs any risk or any trust issues we had previously. So I think the food supply will be very, very similar, that as technology gets better, we embrace that technology and we choose to use it because the benefit outweighs any trust issues.
And Flavia, you mentioned the issue of allergens, and perhaps we'll be able to breed the allergens out of the foods in the future. Do you have any concerns that we might see new allergens developing as the future of food changes?
Yeah, 100%. I think, allergens are proteins. So especially as we're creating all these different types of proteins, it increases the risk of allergenic foods being introduced for our diets. And I guess the best way that we can predict and minimize allergens, I would say, is to introduce that very diet into children. So they're exposed to a variety of potentially allergenic foods to minimize risk of allergens. So hopefully as new foods get introduced, we've seen that happen before with lupin. There was a greater risk of allergies with lupin flower when it was introduced in Australia. So you just got to manage the new introductions of allergenic foods in that way.
Okay, so this will be my last question, and I'll ask it to both of you. I'm combining a few questions here. How do we make sure that these really cool technologies aren't in competition with each other? How do we make sure that the stickers aren't pushing out the edible coatings, aren't competing with the vertical farms? Flavia, I'll let you go first, then I'll come to Taiwo.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. How do we ensure? I think I'm always pro collaboration. I think anytime you've had a good idea and you think you're the only one, someone else has thought of it as well. So hopefully with technology, we can collaborate more and prevent like that competition of who's first to market or who has the technology or the patent for the product. So perhaps there's a way that government can assist with that collaboration of research so that we also are not spending, doubling up on money being spent by different groups doing the exact same thing.
Yes, I do. So my thought is exactly what she said. We can't continue to compete if we know that the technologies that we are developing are for the good of the people. If we compete and the interest is only about the money and what we are going to get from it, then we are going to end up not creating the right technology for the people. So we need to come together, work together. Industries are doing that now, especially on the Central Coast where I am now. People are coming up with new products and they are sharing ideas. So when we share our ideas, that I believe is the way we can actually have impact, on the community.
Well, Taiwo, Flavia, that has been very insightful, and I would like to thank you both for joining us tonight. Before I hand back to TJ in the Shine Dome, as well as thanking you both for these insightful talks, I would love to thank our series supporters, Gira Wines at Gira Station and Hoburg Catering, which you in the Shine Dome have been able to enjoy online. We've missed out on that. Thank you so much to the Shine Dome team, especially through our technological difficulties that we've had at various points in this series. It's been an absolute thrill to work with you all. Thank you, audience, online and in the Shine Dome, for joining us tonight. And thank you to everyone who has enjoyed this series with us throughout 2021. And with that, thank you, TJ. I'll hand back to you.
I would like to thank you, Emma, for co-convening this series with me. I've really enjoyed it. We started this whole idea in 2019. It's taken us 2 years, but even though it was such a long time, it has turned out to be a wonderful series. And I'd like to thank the audience for their loyal attendance at this. It's been great hosting you. The Academy would also like to announce the next series. So in 2022, we're going to have a series called Surprising Science. It's borrowed ideas leading to unimagined consequences. So unusual things, things you didn't expect to hear about. Mind you, you heard about quite a few of those things tonight already, I think. So this new series will uncover remarkable stories of breakthroughs, new technologies, and unexpected outcomes. We look forward to seeing you again next year. Thank you very much. Thank you to our speakers.